examples of where static electricity occurs naturally. And static electricity occurs with lightning, and you know that. What happens is if you have a cloud, your cloud is made up of lots of particles. And when those particles in certain conditions rub against each other and hit each other, there's a lot of friction. And that causes the cloud to end up with an overall charge. So say it ends up positively charged. If too much charge builds up on the cloud isn't happy anymore and it wants to get rid of that charge. And to do that, what it does is it does that by sending that charge generally to the ground. And when it does that, it's very, very hot because it's electricity. At something like 50,000 degrees C, it heats the air. And we can see that then, and that is our lightning. So lightning is a natural example of static electricity. And that static electricity doing what we say discharging. Now, it shouldn't flow through there because air is, of course, an insulator. It shouldn't, air isn't a good conductor, but in certain situations it will discharge through the air. When too much charge has built up, it will discharge through the air to the ground. Although air is normally an insulator, sometimes so much charge builds up due to friction in the clouds that the air allows it to pass through it. This heats the air very rapidly, causes light and a loud sound to be produced. The sound, of course, travels much slower than the light. So we see the light first, and then we hear the sound, and the sound always comes afterwards. So we know when we see a big bolt of lightning that there's going to be a big loud rumble afterwards. Another example, when you get out of a car, when you slide off the seat of a car, there's friction between your clothes and the material that the car is made of. And when that happens, you will build up a charge. So you could have a charge built up on you. So say you've got a negative charge built up on you. And whenever you touch the car itself, say the car is here, you come along and touch it, close the car door or something, then what happens is the car is generally made of metal. The metal allows electrons to flow, so the electrons are going to flow through the metal body of the car. And where your fingers are touching the car, that's where you feel the shock. So you're going to feel a shock there because you've touched something metal after you've been charged up. How are tall buildings protected against being struck by lightning? So tall buildings then, if you have a church steeple, say, you will have a spike on the top of the steeple. And that spike will be connected the whole way down the side of the building to the ground, right down to the ground. And it will be well insulated so it's not touching the building directly. And so when lightning strikes, lightning always hits the highest object. And so when the lightning strikes a tall building, rather than hitting the top of the building, it's going to hit the highest object, which is a lightning conductor. And that conductor will allow the electricity to flow safely down through the conductor, down into the ground, and it won't cause any damage. Remember I said it was at about 50,000 degrees C, so that would cause an awful lot of damage to the building, and so it doesn't do that. It just goes down through the metal conductor down the side, and it doesn't have any cause any harm. So we call that a lightning spike, and you'll see that on the top of very tall buildings. That's why it's very unsafe for you to put up your umbrella in a storm, because there's always a spike on the top of it, which is generally made of metal. And so if the lightning is going to hit the highest object and you're standing holding the umbrella, then chances are it's going to hit the top of the spike of the umbrella, which if it's connected down through your hand and the bottom of it's metal, you're in a bit of trouble. And that's also the reason why you shouldn't stand underneath a tree during a storm. And the reason is because the lightning's going to hit the highest object. And if the tree is the highest object in the vicinity and the lightning's going to strike, it's going to hit the tree. And if you're standing underneath the tree, chances are you're going to get some of that shock as well, and that's very bad for you. Apparently what you're supposed to do, although I don't think I would be too brave about doing this, is you're supposed to lie down on the ground or crouch down on the ground in the middle of the field or the middle of an open space because then the lightning shouldn't hit the highest object, which won't be you, hopefully. The last example then, why might someone else get a shock if you touch them after bouncing on the trampoline? As you bounce on the trampoline, you generally have some kind of insulating socks on, and as you bounce on the trampoline, the friction between your socks and the material of the trampoline causes charge to build up on you. So if you then come off the trampoline and you touch another person, the person isn't a good conductor, but we are reasonable conductors, and that's why electricity is very dangerous for us. Too much electricity passes through you, it can stop your heart, and that's very, very dangerous for us. So if you touch someone else and they're a reasonable conductor, then they're going to get a shock from you, and that's why really what's happening there is that you're just discharging through them. So if I draw another person beside here, and you put your hand out and touch them, I give them a hand there, then you're going to have the static charge moving off you onto them, and they're going to feel a shock, which isn't going to be too pleasant.